not a conference call.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the first webinar in our 2017 educational webinar series, Bridging the Gap with the Food Allergy App. My name is Lori Tomachek, and I'm the Director of Education for AllerTrain, and I'll be your moderator for today. Before we get started, I want to go ahead and take you through a couple of housekeeping items. If you will all please mute your line so we don't get any background noise on the call today, that would be very helpful. Please, each of you, mute your line if you're not a presenter so we don't have to worry about the background noise. Please go ahead and do that now. On your screen, you'll see a small chat box. Please use that chat box to type in any questions you have, go through the presentation today, and at the end of the webinar, we'll be able to get your questions answered. We should have some time for questions today, so type your questions in that chat box. If for any reason the audio goes out during today's webinar, just stay on the line and you will be placed into a lobby and be reconnected once we get the audio back up. Technical difficulties are somewhat normal. If you happen to lose the connection on your end, just dial back in and you'll be placed right back into the webinar. We are recording the webinar today and posting it to our YouTube channel, but we do encourage you to take notes and ask questions to make sure you can take back all this information to your brand. And finally, this webinar is approved for 1 Level 2 continuing education credit through the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. There will be a pre-signed form attached to the email that will be sent after the webinar today that you can easily fill out and submit to A&D if you're looking for that credit. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and read our disclaimer in its entirety. The content shown here is for educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. We are not lawyers and we do not claim to be. You are encouraged to verify any and all parts of this presentation with your own brand's legal counsel. MenuTrinfo will not be held responsible for fines or other penalties that arise from recommendations that were made following our best understanding of all published laws and supplemental guidance documents. This webinar contains material protected under international and federal copyright. Any unauthorized reprint or use of any kind of this material. No part of this webinar may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, including photocopying, recording, or by any information storage and retrieval system without express written permission from MenuTrinfo, LLC, the author and publisher. With all the housekeeping tasks behind us, let's go ahead and dive into the webinar. We have 2 incredible guest speakers today that I'd like to introduce you to, and the first is Paul Antico. He's the CEO and founder of Allergy Eats, the leading guide to finding allergy-friendly restaurants. He's the father of 5 children, 3 of whom have food. As a passionate food allergy advocate, he serves on the board of directors for the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America's New England chapter, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health Food Allergy Working Group, the Institute of Medicine's Advisory Panel for the Consensus Study on Food Allergies, and the National Peanut Board Food Allergy Education Advisory Council. And our second guest presenter today is Jen Cafferty. As founder and CEO of the Gluten-Free Media Group, Jen is a nationally recognized expert on connecting gluten-free brands to consumers. Not only does Jen run the largest gluten-free media group in the U.S., reaching over 3 million people annually, she and her family follow restricted diets due to a variety of health concerns. With years of experience living a gluten-free lifestyle, Jen's opinion has become the seal of good housekeeping for many brands, and she is considered to be one of the foremost experts in gluten-free living in North America. Thank you to Paul and Jen for joining us on the call today, and with that, I'll go ahead and hand it to Paul. Paul, are you there with us? Is Paul on the line? Okay, we're going to try to get in touch with Paul here. Sorry about that. Is Jen on the line?
I am, if you can hear me.
Hey, Jen. Let's go ahead and advance to Jen's slides, and we will figure out what happened to Paul. Sorry about that.
Hello?
Is that Paul?
It is.
Hey, Paul. We were looking for you. Okay, we'll get back to where Paul's going to talk.
Sorry, I just heard the start to my intro and then everything went mute, so my
Okay,
apologies.
sorry about that. Well, you have the floor.
Great, thank you. Thanks everybody for dialing in. Just before I go through the slides, the presentations I generally make are for restaurants, and I know a lot of you are from the university food service community. So a lot of the slides may initially look like, well, he's gearing this toward the restaurants, and they were, but most of them can easily be considered useful by universities as well. I can answer any questions at the end, but I think as you see the points I make about restaurants, you'll be able to make the similar correlations with your own dining facilities. So in any case, to get started, just very quick background on me. This is basically it. My kids are a lot older than that, but man, I just can't help but use this picture of my cute daughter when she was really little. So I was an analyst and a portfolio manager at Fidelity Investments, where basically I studied tens of thousands of businesses and made investments in them. And it was through that I saw an opportunity to bring something to the food allergy community, namely a food allergy dining guide, where people with food allergies could go, almost like other people go to Yelp, but something specific to the food allergy community where we could go and find restaurants that are rated based on their allergy friendliness. I've had countless experiences myself, and I think you can talk to almost anybody in the food allergy community who will share their experiences with times when they struggled to find a place to eat, and they drove around for hours, or they had a bad experience where they just weren't welcomed. So I created this guide, Allergy Eats, and I have a great team now working on it in order to help the food allergy community and the gluten-free community find restaurants that are better able to cater to them. So some of these slides are going to have a lot of text. You don't have to read all the text. I'll just kind of walk through it. This is a very obvious slide, but one that needs to be at the beginning, which suggests that people are making dining decisions and all kinds of purchase decisions online. And, again, that seems pretty obvious. I think anybody that's been in the world of the Internet kind of realizes that now. But, again, 90% of consumers say positive reviews on a website will influence whether they visit a restaurant, and 80% vice versa. And interestingly, that last point, 88% of consumers trust online reviews as much as they trust reviews from friends. So when people are going out to eat, they're looking online. It's as simple as that. The natural next comment is that the food allergy community relies online as well. Even more so, again, because if you think about it, those of you without food allergies, when you're dining out, again, you can go to Yelp, or you could just drive around and pick a restaurant that looks good. The food allergy community doesn't really have that option. We do, but it's just not as easy. You can end up driving around, as I had, for 2 hours. So the food allergy community certainly goes online as well, and they're not generally looking. As you can see, that second bullet, only 13% are really looking at the general restaurant rating websites and apps. 60%, and I think that number is higher now. I think this data is 2 years old. 60% are using websites and apps like Allergy Eats, like Jen's Find Me Gluten Free, to find ratings that are very specific for our community. And a lot of people have tried to create these, and it's very difficult. So I think, we're the only game in town on food allergies, and Find Me Gluten Free, as far as I know, is dominating that side as well. Again, just following on the same theme, food allergy community is not only going online, but this is an important point to note, and very important for colleges as well. The food allergy community is very, very loyal to restaurants that accommodate. Again, when you think about it, it's not just about going out to eat, it's about safety. Particularly when you're dealing with parents of young kids. Adults and even teens to a degree, but most so adults, really don't take proper precautions with themselves and act rather foolishly, to be honest. But when you're dealing with the parents of young kids, or even parents of kids going off to college, they're making choices based on food allergy accommodations. I was involved in, this is going way back, but student government in college, and I've certainly dealt with a lot of colleges before I got involved in food allergies. And those of you who are in the university world know that it's not the swiftest moving community on the face of the earth. However, I have to say, I've almost never seen an issue that makes colleges move as quickly as food allergies have. and again, it's not lightning fast, but it's a heck of a lot faster than a lot of other issues. And I think the reason is because those universities that quote-unquote get it with respect to their food allergy students, just like restaurants, the restaurants will understand that if I can't serve someone with food allergies, I'm going to lose their dining party. Well, that stinks. I'm going to lose some money. But if you're in a university scenario and you can't accommodate somebody with food allergies, you're losing someone that's going to pay you anywhere from, I don't know, what, $60,000 to $200,000 over 4 years. For with the investment you need to make to become food allergy friendly, you generate a tremendous return by taking that step. So, again, anyway, I'm segueing a little bit, but the loyalty factor is critical because when individuals with food allergies find restaurants that accommodate them well, they go back. We have with my family, now we've been dealing with this for 19 years, so we found a lot more restaurants than other people have that we're comfortable going to in our local area. But still, when we go out on that lazy Friday night where we don't want to cook, we really only go to like 2 or 3 options. It's not, hey, let's drive around and see what we like. So this slide really gets to the point that says that people with food allergies are 40% more loyal to their favorite restaurant than those without. And as those of you in the restaurant community know, loyal guests are huge money makers because they come back again and again, and you don't have to pay to attract them. 92% of food allergic guests will return frequently to the same eating establishment. So I just can't stress this point enough. Again, this just has a couple of quotes. Don't read the whole thing, but the important phrase is the one highlighted at the top. There is an emotional connection. You have to see somebody. You go to Disney and you see a family giving their child their first meal out, and the chef comes out and doesn't say, "Here's what we can feed you from our menu." The chef will say, "What would you like to eat?" And they get this big meal, and the tears just start flowing from the parents' eyes. But again, as Ming Tsai says in the second quote, you've won a customer for life. They're advocates for you. So I can't stress enough how important getting this community is. That once you get them, they're not going away. Here's some numbers.
Jeff Prescott, can you call the main office, please?
Oh, that's not for me. Here's some numbers for Disney. They made their first concerted effort at attracting food allergic diners in 2005. At the time, Disney World served 52,000 what they called special dietary meals. 4 years later, that number almost quadrupled. That is not from the growth in the food allergy community. That's from word getting out about how well they accommodate and the growth in the number of people with food allergies that are saying, we can go to Disney World, we can go to SeaWorld, we can go to Hershey Park, we can go to Great Adventure, or whatever it's called, Six Flags, but they're going to Disney World. And you can see the two together, Disney World and Disneyland, doubled from 2009 to 2014. This is starting to get replicated. Now you see places like what I call a staycation, Great Wolf Lodge. Those of you that know about Great Wolf Lodge, there are about 15 of them, I think, 14 in the U.S., 1 in Canada, something like that. They have similar dining practices as Disney, and they're starting to attract a ton of people in this kind of staycation community. So again, Disney is not a cheap trip for those of you who've gone. You between the flight costs, between staying in the hotels and the park passes, everything else, it's very expensive. And I've spoken to tons of people who have made a trip to Disney World so their child can have their first meal out. Disney World is known as kind of the gold standard of food allergies, but when you think about that, how far people will go so their child can eat in a restaurant, that's pretty amazing. It says something very special about how loyal this community is and how much they're willing to go through, to be treated as any other diner. So let's get some numbers, and this is where it gets interesting. Food allergies affect 4 to 5% of the U.S. population, higher in children. Celiac disease alone, and Jen can correct me later if I'm wrong, technically is said to affect 1% of individuals, but a couple of years ago the term non-celiac gluten sensitivity was generally accepted in the medical community, and that affects another 5 or 6%. That's basically, and again, Jen will correct me if I'm wrong, non-celiac gluten sensitivity occurs in individuals that have the same physical effects to gluten as do those with celiac disease, but they don't have the biomarker for celiac disease. So for all intents and purposes, these individuals have to avoid gluten. So you could say there's 10% in those two categories of food allergies and gluten intolerant. 10% of Americans are also believed to have at least one other food intolerance. I didn't put in here that 30% of Americans believe they have a food allergy, but This fourth point is critical also. The food allergic individual is the veto vote for an entire restaurant party. If you go out to eat, if my family goes out to eat, and you can't accommodate my middle son who's got 4 allergies, he's down from a lot more, we leave. There's a party at 7. You just lost us because you can't serve our one child. So with the average family size, again, of 2.58, I usually think of it as the average restaurant party of 3. If you take that food allergy community of 5%, let's only include celiac disease and not the non-celiac gluten sensitives, that's 6% of the U.S. times 3, because they're going out in party of 3. It's 18%. I wrote here, conservatively, 10 to 15% of the U.S. population, 30 to 45 million people, have their dining decisions affected by the food allergy friendliness of a restaurant. Take that in for a second. That's an enormous part of the population. 10 to 15% of U.S. dining decisions, or U.S. diners, are being affected by food allergy accommodations. And again, you can think about that with respect to colleges. It's huge. Here's some estimates from restaurants, just in case you think I'm crazy. Blue Ginger says they believe they've gotten a 15 to 20% increase in their business due to allergen awareness. They're known as, Ming Tsai is kind of the godfather of food allergy, especially here in Massachusetts. Not Your Average Joe's chain of about 25 restaurants think they've got a 10% increase. Upscale, a lot of people think this is just a kid's problem. Upscale restaurant Del Posto in New York, they told me last year 20 to 25% of their orders, about 60% of tables, had individuals with an allergy or an intolerance. Now, we know that some people do fake an allergy, fake an intolerance. Nonetheless, as a restaurateur or as or running a college dining facility, you can't take that chance. You can't say, well, wait a second, I'm going to bet that this person doesn't really have a food allergy. I think they're the faker. So, it's unfortunate for our community, for the food allergy community, but that's still true. And MenuTrinfo, listed right here, a couple of years ago, suggested that adding just gluten-free options, not food allergies, caused an average of 8% lift in sales for a restaurant. There were a variety of sources that they shared that said the number was anywhere between 1 to 14%. But again, this supports what I've said earlier, that the winnable market share is 10 to 15%. So let's look at the economics. This is when I really hit my stride from my former life as a financial analyst. If you take a $2 million sales restaurant, this is a pretty typical basic model of how much is spent on food and beverage, labor, other operating costs, and you see the profit is $360,000 or about an 18% operating margin. So what happens if you win 10%? If you go from allergy unfriendly to allergy friendly and you win just 10% more sales, not the 15, and I'm not even going to talk about ongoing loyalty, just 10% greater sales on a regular basis. Your sales, there they are, they go up 10% because the food and beverage goes up 10% because you still have to feed them. Labor costs go up less, you get leverage on that because you still have the staff. And other operating expenses, you get leverage there. So you're seeing actually an operating profit increase on that 10% increase in sales of 24% or a 43% incremental margin. This isn't, incremental margins are not specific to food allergies. I think every restaurateur knows that for every additional dollar you attract in the door, you get more than just that 18 cents of profit. You get about 40 to 45 cents. But this is showing that with food allergic individuals, you can drive, a kind of regular ongoing increase in those profits. And if you note what I wrote at the bottom, many food allergic individuals try to dine at off-peak days or particularly at off-peak hours, because what we try to teach food allergic individuals is that if you go to a restaurant before peak hours, 5 o'clock, 5:30, it's obviously not as crazy in the restaurant. So that gives the kitchen, that gives everybody the chance to really take all the necessary precautions they need to. So what's the investment on this? I mean, okay, so you're going to get another $75,000 in profits. Is it worth it? Total investment under $500. This information came from a gentleman, Ted Bezekos, a food service advisor. It does not include training, but let's say the training is another $500. Let's say the entire whopping investment is $1,000. Here are your returns on investment. I mean, assume I'm wrong by a factor of 10 in any of these. Assume that $2 million restaurant isn't going to get $200,000 in additional revenue or $86,000 in incremental profit. Let's say I'm off by a factor of 10. It's $8,000. You're still seeing an 860% return on investment. This is an enormous no-brainer, and that's why restaurants are moving in that direction. And again, when I extrapolate that to colleges, sure, it's not just 1,000 because you have facilities that you need to alter and manage. But again, when you think of the lost opportunity of students. One slide I didn't put in here, and I should bring this up. Allergy Eats ran a survey about 2 years ago, and one of the questions we put in there was for students that had either just made a college decision or were about to make a college decision, and we asked how important food allergy accommodations were in their choice of which school to attend. A third said it wasn't important. A third said it was a critical factor, and another third said it was amongst the more important factors. So 2/3 of the food allergy community, 7 to 8% of children, when they go to college, they're saying food allergies are an important factor in the college we choose. And you guys know that unless you're at the far end of the bell curve in terms of exclusivity of your school, that students do have a lot of choices. And what are the differentiators? Well, this is a big one. This can be a life and death one, and people will make choices based on the food allergy accommodations. This is a quote from a local restaurant here, Davio's in Boston, very well respected. They say exactly what I said. The investment was largely one of educating staff. I always say the biggest investment to becoming food allergy friendly is leadership at the top. If the CEOs, the presidents, the owners want to make a commitment to food allergies, they will, and the restaurant will become allergy friendly. If they don't care, it's not going to happen. After you become allergy friendly, if you're a restaurant, of course you send your food allergic diners to Allergy Eats to rate your restaurant. Sorry, a little bit of a plug. But what happens is the National Restaurant Association and a ton of other food restaurant trade groups have said apps and websites with restaurant ratings are dominating the online reputations in terms of who's going to choose your restaurant or not choose your restaurant. So you need to proactively manage that. Send people to these sites to rate your restaurant, and that's what we tell people. Send your food allergic diners that have a good experience to Allergy Eats to rate you, and that will help in the end, help your reputation. Allergy Eats, very basically, now that I've talked about it a bunch or mentioned it a bunch, we're a website and an app that helps individuals, again, find restaurants based on their allergy friendliness. Restaurants are rated on a 1 to 5 scale. We don't allow people to actually click 1 to 5 stars because we don't want them to rate the restaurant on anything outside of food allergies. So instead, we ask each rater 3 very simple multiple choice questions related to food allergies and the accommodations that they received, and we then translate that into a numeric score to make it easy for the user. Again, we launched in 2010, yada yada, been in a lot of publications. It's hard to show on this screen what the site really looks like. It's not really made for a slide like this. But you can see we have restaurants listed one after the other. The number you see in the top right of each listing, I don't know if you see my cursor. I don't think you do. I think that's just me circling for no reason. That's the overall allergy friendliness rating of that restaurant on a 1 to 5 scale. The little marks in the middle that you really can't read on this slide, those show the rating for 4 of the individual allergies. I didn't choose all 10 that we generally show because it'll make the screen too busy. For some of our partners, they have this thing called a restaurant allergen commitment statement, where they can say in their own words how they accommodate food allergic diners, what they do. And this is, once you click on a restaurant like Burton's Grill, you can see there are reviews like anywhere else. Again, you can't really read it on this, but these reviews are related to food allergies. If not, if I don't catch it, someone else clicks report, I find it, we delete the review. If it's not related to food allergies, it can talk about other things, but if it's not related to food allergies, we don't include it. So this, again, is very tailored to the food allergy community. So for consumers, we give them a tool that's of great use. For businesses that become our partners, we give them the opportunity to highlight their efforts to accommodate the food allergy community and get that business that I referred to earlier. So our partners can put together a listing, rather than just a basic listing that instead of having their logo would have a generic, what we call the Allergy Spoon logo, and none of these things on the bottom that are, I think, in red. I'm colorblind, but I believe they're in red on the bottom. For our partners, for a very low price, they can add a logo. They get preferential positioning. We never mess with the ratings. That's sacred, obviously. That's just, that's dealing with health and safety that we wouldn't mess with. We'll add links to, like you see here, a gluten-free menu, allergen list, anything else. They add that allergen commitment statement. For those that have an interactive allergen menu, these are becoming all the rage. We'll add that. So we add a lot to help our partners highlight their restaurants to the community, and they love it because the community really the more information can provide them, the more they want to see. this, again, just helps them get guest reviews, which we've talked about is important. I'm going to kind of wrap this up. I think I'm going along. The restaurant partners say good things. I skipped one about the people saying they love us. But again, in conclusion, the food allergy community is making those dining decisions online. They're extremely loyal. You really, really should not ignore them. The financial impact can be tremendous. And they're coming to Allergy Eats, and they're going to Find Me Gluten-Free to find your restaurants. And like I said, a lot of this, if I talked about things that you don't understand how it might apply to the college and university communities, then please feel free to ask me later. That's it, and I thank you. I hope I didn't take up too much time, and I thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Paul. We appreciate your expertise and insight very much. I do want to encourage and remind everyone listening in, if you have questions during the call today for Paul or Jen, please type those questions in the chat box on your screen, and we will have some time at the end to address your questions. All right, at this time, we'd like to hand the floor over to Jen Cafferty.
Thanks. And I'm going to see if I can figure out how to advance the slides. Paul, what did you click on, the arrow?
Yeah,
I got it. I'm good to go. So thank you. Paul, I'm so happy you went first because I think your statistics and your numbers are just so telling of what's really going on and what has been going on and what continues to happen moving forward. So everybody, my name is Jen. I've been gluten-free, dairy-free, everything else free in our family for about 15 years, and I've had my company 10 years.
As quickly as possible.
I also related, I know a lot of you are here from the university setting, and again, my slides also are more tailored to restaurants, but it is applicable. And I have two teenage children. One is gluten-free, one is gluten-free, grain-free, dairy-free, and has fructose issues. And my oldest one that has all the issues definitely will be spending a lot of money in the university setting. She wants to either be a physician or a veterinarian, so we'll be paying out the wazoo forever. And she has so many food issues that really her college education, besides academically, is going to be based on where she can eat. So I think that it's great that the universities are really focusing on this because it's just so important. So my company, we reach about 3 million people a year, and we do that through Find Me Gluten-Free, which is a website and app very similar to Paul's, slightly different. We really, though, only focus on gluten-free issues. That being said, in the gluten-free community, we find about 60 to 70% of gluten-free consumers also are trying to avoid dairy at some point or another. So when you start to read reviews on Find Me Gluten-Free, you'll notice that. We also run consumer shows around the country, and especially whether it's a restaurant or a university, we always welcome the food service community to come to the expos for free and see really what's going on and find new products for your students or your consumers. There's so much available today to make the experience better. And then last, we do run e-blasts and focus groups, and that's how, whether it's a restaurant, I suppose a university setting too, or a brand figures out what really is working for them in the community. So Find Me Gluten-Free is GPS-based. If you are on your app and you're sitting in your car driving around trying to figure out where to eat, that would, it would show you the closest places to you. But what we also find, which is very interesting, is that we have more people that use Find Me Gluten-Free on their computer than they do on a mobile device. And what that tells us is they're sitting at work or at home doing research, trying to figure out where can they eat safely. So I'm always amazed that there still are more people looking for where can they eat safely on their computers. Our information for Find Me Gluten-Free is crowdsourced, so these 3 million people that are on it annually, they go in and they say, hey, here's a restaurant that I had a really fabulous experience at and I didn't get sick and here's why. Or even more important, here's a restaurant that said they had a gluten-free menu and I really got sick. And those are the reviews that I think really make a difference in the community. So this is just a screenshot of what Find Me Gluten-Free would look like. So the first screen, if you were on your phone, would say Search Near Me, and that's the most clicked screen. And then the middle screen there with Wheat's End Cafe on top, what that's showing you is if you look down, you can see, okay, all of these restaurants are 0.1 miles from this user. But at the top is a paid advertiser with us. So Wheat's End pays to be a featured restaurant. And you can see that by featuring your restaurant at the top, they have 69 ratings, where the other places have maybe 2, 3, or 4. So it really is a big difference when you're up at the top and you start getting good ratings, and then people, once you have a few, all of a sudden they start really coming in. Also, we have an algorithm built in where if enough people say this was a safe, dedicated gluten-free business, then the dedicated gluten-free business band that you see on Wheat's End pops up. And then on the right, you can see, again, just like on Allergy Eats, there's ratings and reviews. So the way that, and I think this is very applicable for universities as well as restaurants, the public is going in and recommending and rating these establishments. What happens once we get those in our system, we have staff behind the scenes that goes in and reviews them. And just like Paul's, if somebody does see something that isn't appropriate or really not related to gluten-free, the public reports it, or if we catch it, we take that down. We're also really looking for restaurant owners that are typing in a lot of information about themselves and it's not coming from the public. And on our end, we are able to see, this doesn't seem right, that this Asian restaurant, when we look online and we call them, has no gluten-free options other than rice, and we pull that down. We talked about the feature listing, and I'll talk about that, especially applicable in a university in a little bit, but that does appear at the top. And I think the biggest thing for featured restaurants are that they do get up to 25 more clicks than a regular listing. So if you've gone to great lengths to feed your customers safely, then you should be promoting it. Just in general about Find Me Gluten Free, like I said, we have 3 million people. We capture about 15,000 new email names per month. So those are new users that are starting to use the app or website. And basically we have about 1 million searches every month. So it really does get a lot of use and is the go-to place for the gluten-free world when they're looking where to eat. The other interesting thing about Find Me Gluten Free is it's all organic growth. We don't advertise it. So this is word of mouth. This is the community literally saying, hey, how do I dine safely? And then they find the app and website. So everyone wants to know how you can increase your sales and make more money. And basically, if, like I said, if you're doing a good job and you've gone to any lengths to meet the needs of your consumers, you need to tell people about it. As Paul said, the allergen community and gluten-free community are so loyal. And Paul, you were dead on saying that it's that no veto vote of that one person. The one person that has the allergies or has to be gluten-free or has any dietary restriction, they're the one that says no. And if you're not meeting their needs, you're not meeting the needs of the whole party. So that's just so important to remember. I think one of the most important things to take away from these applications, whether it's mine, Paul's, anything online, is you need to be monitoring what's happening. And it's wonderful to read all the positive reviews so that you can continue to use those good practices that people really like, or maybe serve that one dish that's getting rave reviews. But it's also so important to be reading those negative reviews. And I'll show you a slide in a minute where it really comes into play. And obviously good practices mean more sales and more money. So, the more that you can do to track that, the more important that it is. This is one of my favorite quotes. Your brand is what other people say about you when you are not in the room. And it's so true. And a lot of times I think we shut our ears and don't really hear what other people are saying about us when we're not there. And these apps and websites are a way almost to be a spy network for you. You can go on there and you can look, because no one's going to really tell you, unless they're very angry, the bad things. So this is for P.F. Chang's. These are positive reviews about P.F. Chang's, and I don't know if you're looking at this on a phone. Again, I apologize. It's probably very small. But you can see P.F. Chang's is beloved in the gluten-free community. They do such a good job. Almost always get 4 or 5 stars, really just are loved and very celiac friendly. They just do a fabulous job. But then sometimes they don't. And I'm always fascinated to see, well, what's going on? So if I'm looking on the left side, I can see, well, a couple of these places got 1-star or 2-star. That's interesting. And then maybe you click on one. And on the right side, you see their Virginia Beach location. And you read down. And almost every month in 2016, somebody was saying something negative about them. Now, it's possible once one person says something negative, the next one does and the next one does, regardless of how good of a job they're doing, because that's human nature. But at the same time, that's an odd thing for P.F. Chang's. And so that's something where if they're really monitoring what's going on online, they can go back to that Virginia Beach location and say, what's going on here? This is very odd. This isn't our usual, we never see this. What's happening at your particular location? And I know we have a lot of universities on the call. I think the biggest thing that you can do for your students and faculty and just anybody at the university is figure out which of your dining locations can be listed on some kind of application. If you know you have allergen-friendly locations, gluten-free locations that meet the needs of your students and faculty, make sure that somebody's listing them somewhere. On our site, anybody can go on and list them. It can be a student, it can be a faculty member. Just someone needs to get them on there. And then exactly what Paul said, then you need to encourage the students and the faculty to start reviewing these dining facilities. And that's how you're really going to know if you're meeting their needs. You can always, on most of these sites, pay for a featured listing to be listed up at the top. If you're really doing something special, you could boost it up. Kind of trickier on my site, at least, if it's a dining hall closed to the public, since we're a public site. But you can always put notes in there. This is a dining hall facility only available to students of the university of wherever. And then those notes are in there, and then the public knows not that they can't show up there. But again, the first thing is list it, and the second is encourage people to rate it, because once it's out there, that's really where you are going to get the biggest bang for your buck. Again, as Paul said, these markets are continuing to grow. In the gluten-free world, it's not that more and more people are getting diagnosed with celiac disease. There's still so few people diagnosed with celiac disease. In the gluten-free world, people just don't feel well, and they're trying to diet, and they're like, wow, this lifestyle isn't that hard, and I feel so much better. And those numbers keep growing and growing and growing and growing. And that's really what's driving this whole gluten-free market and the gluten-free trends in general. So my just final thought for you is, if you've gone to the effort, and this says gluten-free, but whether it's gluten-free, allergen-friendly, whatever it is, if you made a menu, if you went to the effort to have an interactive menu, if you have a dedicated gluten-free fryer or a nut-free fryer and can keep somebody safe, that alone brings in so much traffic. Give someone a safe French fry and they are thrilled. Train your staff. Well, you really need to tell the world about it, or you're wasting some of your time. So I just really encourage you to promote what you've worked so hard for, and I think you're really going to see a tremendous increase in both loyalty as well as revenue.
Thank you very much, Jen. At this time, we'd like to open up the floor to any questions that our listeners may have. So far, I've just seen one question come through on the chat box. So again, if any of you have questions, please type those into the chat box there, and we will address them now. The one question that came in was specifically about Allergy Eats, wondering if it's available on iTunes, and I'll add that to Jen as well. Is Find Me Gluten Free on iTunes?
Yeah, Allergy Eats is a website as well as an app for both Apple and Android devices.
And same with Find Me Gluten Free. Find Me Gluten Free is also a website as well as Apple and Android. And then Find Me Gluten Free also, if you have universities or establishments in other countries, it's in 36 countries.
Here we go. We had another question come in. Says Paul had a slide about what can be done in your restaurant to make it gluten-free. Can we show that slide again?
About how to make it gluten-free? Did I understand that right?
Yes.
The slide I think that's probably being referred to is, and sorry I'm scrolling and probably making everyone dizzy, the slide about some of the products that are needed. You know, frankly, when people say to me, how do I make my restaurant gluten-free or allergy-friendly, I'm usually sending them the other way. I'm sending them back to MenuTrinfo, back to Betsy and the crew, because they're really the experts in this. But it's not rocket science at the end of the day. And, you know, the interesting thing about gluten-free and food allergies is if you do one right, you most likely can do them all right. In other words, it's rare to have, you know, a dairy allergy-friendly restaurant where you can't then also be allergy-friendly for people with egg allergies or nut allergies or celiac. You know, granted, the menu items, you know, may be different, and some restaurants like a Five Guys Burgers and Fries, peanuts are a very specific part of their brand identity, so that's going to be a little different. But for the most part, once you have commitment from the top, and they say, we're going to be allergy-friendly. And again, when I say allergy-friendly, I always do include celiac, even though it's technically not an allergy. It's you have to take it just as seriously. Once you have commitment from the top, you get everybody trained. That's the most important part. You put procedures and protocols in place, which is critical also. And, you know, someone like MenuTrinfo can help you do that, but hopefully the training that you go through will help you understand how to do that. And by procedures and protocols, I mean I go in, I say I have an allergy, and everybody does it differently. Every restaurant does this differently that best suits their particular physical location and you know, the interactions they have among individuals. But let's say I go in, I say I have an allergy. Maybe the staff member flags the manager. The manager comes out. Maybe the manager walks me through what I can and can't have, confirms with me anything that I want to know, brings it back into the kitchen. The manager may then say, I'm going to be responsible for this. I'm going to walk it all the way through. Or maybe the kitchen says, okay, Paul's son with a dairy allergy wants a hamburger, but we've been doing cheeseburgers here, so here's a separate area of our grill that we maintain as allergy-friendly, so we can do, you know, a hamburger quickly that won't be cross-contaminated. He wants fries. Okay, well, that's good. We have a dedicated fryer here. If not, maybe we bake fries and we use tinfoil. Now, by the way, I'm not a restaurateur, but I'm doing my best here. And then that's put on a plate. Maybe the plate's flagged. Maybe it's a different color, different shape, has a frill pick in it. Maybe it's the manager that brings it back out. So there are procedures and protocols that are put in place, and, you know, like I said, you can dedicate certain areas of the grill. You can have separate fryers for French fries that don't get cross-contaminated with breaded products that may have egg in them or something like that, or gluten in them. So the important thing, again, is to use separate utensils. There are companies like San Jamar that actually makes an allergy-friendly cooking kit that's got its own cutting board, its own utensils. You literally open the kit, you do everything you need, and you put it aside, you wash it. So I hope that answers some of the question. But again, I usually do send people to MenuTrinfo when they really want the details of how to make it all work.
Thank you. And the person that asked that question will be in touch with you to follow up.
Okay.
Any other final remarks from you, Paul, or Jen as well?
You know, for me, I think the biggest thing is just realizing that this is not going away. It seems to be getting bigger and bigger, and I have a feeling as legislation comes into play, some of these things will be mandatory, whether it's in the next 1, 2, 5, 10, 20 years. And, you know, if you're ahead of the game and starting to think about them before it's mandated on you, that always helps. But just really, not only are you doing a good thing for the public, but you will make money from it. And there's very few things in life that you can feel good about where you're helping so many people and increasing your bottom line. And I think that using technology in a smart way to do that is something that, you know, we couldn't have done 5 or 10 years ago. These things didn't exist. There was no way to go and look and help people not only find your establishment, but help you see what's really going on without you having to sit and really talk to people too. It's just the information is out there. And so if you are doing the right thing at your facility it will come back to you in the long run in just so many positive ways.
Yeah, I would first say that everybody on this call has taken the first most important step, and that's getting educated. And hopefully, from what Jen and I spoke about and some of the economics I've shown, hopefully you say, wow, this is bigger than I even thought. That's usually the reaction I get. And hopefully what that does is it inspires you to go back and get your organizations, not only interested but excited about becoming more allergy friendly. Jen's absolutely right. This isn't going away. I've stayed close to some of the best doctors in the country with respect to food allergies. Nobody's close to figuring out a cause, let alone a cure, and you're not going to find out the latter without the former. All the research you read about, every now and then you'll read in the New York Times or in some broad publication, something about a cure. There was this great study that recently came out that there's a belief that you can reduce the prevalence of peanut allergies, and that could happen. That looks like that's very promising, but you can't mislead that into thinking it's going away. Newspapers and magazines have to cut things short, and they don't get to share all the details that you get in the medical journals. The bottom line is, again, no one knows the cause or why this has suddenly really surged in the last 20 years. No one knows the cure, and more importantly, what I call the first wave of this 20-year cycle of kids with food allergies is now in college, getting out of college, or in their 20s. They're starting to eat out more and on their own. They're going to start having kids, and there definitely seems to be a genetic factor involved. So, that would suggest that this could actually even the prevalence could actually even be amplified. Not to mention, what's often not spoken about is there is this kind of hidden surge, so to speak, in adult onset food allergies, where people like any of us that might not have food allergies, one day we bite into a peanut or a piece of shellfish and we have an anaphylactic reaction. That's happening with it's pretty scary when you think about it because you're completely unprepared for it, but that's happening more and more. And so I think Jen's right. Legislation may come and start to address this, but I think that the legislation, by the time it comes to many states, is going to be moot because what's happening is more and more food service providers are realizing how important this is, and they're taking action on their own. And I think hopefully economics will drive this faster than government because we know how fast government generally works. So I do think that this is the trend is not our friend in terms of this going away, and you can either put the investment in now, gain all that loyalty, gain the business, or put it in 5 years being reactionary, and you've already lost the loyalty of people that are going to start going to, P.F. Chang's or Not Your Average Joe's or Burton's Grill or other places where they've already learned are allergy friendly.
Yeah, I think one other thing just that I'd like to throw in, and I think anybody that's in the food service community can probably attest to this, and sadly, the gluten-free community is known as many of the people maybe don't need to be gluten-free, or they'll say that, I have to be gluten-free. Well, no, I can eat the fries in the fryer. It's okay, but I don't want the bun. And if you have good procedures in place, it shouldn't matter. You can still meet their needs. And every establishment has their own ways of dealing with it. I am somebody personally, and I am more entrenched in the gluten-free and allergen world than I hope anybody ever has to be. I can, for whatever reason, eat a drop of soy sauce. I can have fries made in a non-dedicated fryer. But woe if you give me a crouton on my salad and you removed it and there's breadcrumbs on there. I'm sick as a dog. So I might order in a strange way to you, but I just know my body really well, and I know what gets me sick and what doesn't get me sick. And I think that that's something that's happening more and more too, as people are becoming more in tune with their body, and they're starting to order in very strange manners that are a pain in the neck to anybody in the hospitality industry. But that's the reality of what's happening now. And if you have gone through training and you have good protocols in place, it shouldn't matter. You should still be able to meet their needs in a way. But I know that if you're frustrated by the person coming in and saying, I can do this, I can't do that, blah, 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 you're not alone, but it's very normal, and it's normal in our community, and I can attest to the fact that I am one of those people. I can have this and I can't have that, and it's just how my body's made. So it's a tough one, and it's very annoying, I think, when you're really trying to serve people safely, but it's just that's reality.
not to keep these closing comments going, but there's one thing that struck me that I think is really critical for colleges and universities. My oldest son, who I've got a lot of kids. I've got too many kids. I've got 5 kids. 3 have food allergies. My oldest is 19. He's a sophomore in college. I won't say the university to protect the innocent, but he has a tree nut allergy. He got to the school last year as a freshman, and wanting him to be on his own, we didn't talk to the school about food allergies or anything. Now, by the way, he is since the age of 4, he's known he's going to be a meteorologist. It's kind of a little insane, but that is what it is. So we were actually in that 1/3 of families who did not make food allergy accommodations a critical factor in our decision. But he knows what to do, so he went to the dining services manager, mentioned he had a tree nut allergy, and wanted to know how he could eat, in the cafeterias. Now, managing just a tree nut allergy really isn't that difficult compared to many others, and I can speak from family experience as well as a lot of other experience. What happened was he ended up eating soy nut butter and crackers for the first week until I finally had to jump in and help out. And the reason was when he disclosed his allergy, ironically, the food service facilities here, the cafeterias, have every item listed with which allergies they contain. So it should have been really easy. But what happened was they gave him 3 sets of printouts, over 150 pages of PDFs, with every meal that would be served at every time of day for every day through the term. But they had 8 color codings, and I kid you not, 8 color codings saying this item has the ingredient you're allergic to. This was processed in a facility. This was made near this. This was this. This could have it. They gave every CYA statement such that there was almost nothing in black, which was the color that it's safe to eat. And I mean nothing. I mean literally almost nothing. And it scared him to eat. So please keep in mind that while obviously you need to provide all the information possible, or you want to, and you want to make sure you keep these students safe, and by giving them everything you can, it's really important to also help facilitate their ability to eat. and that's what happened when I finally said, geez, I have to get involved. And ironically, it's a university that was trained by Betsy at MenuTrinfo, so I knew they knew how to do it. And I spoke to them about that. My son went back, and they walked him through in a more proper fashion to say, okay, so this is how you can decide. And he had the information he needed, so he knew, okay, well, these are theoretical risks of this or that or the other thing, but then he was able to at least dine out, eat every day, without it always being soy nut butter and crackers. And here he is in his sophomore year, and there hasn't been an anaphylactic reaction. Everything's gone great. So just please keep that in mind, that while the instinct, particularly in a university, is to have to always cover your rear end, that you really have to make sure that you help these students figure out what they can eat on a realistic basis.
I think my last point is, Paul and I are always available. We're both very approachable, and we love to both talk. I think when Paul and I get on the phone, the conversations probably go on 40 times longer than they need to. But, if you need something or have questions, we're both very easy to reach. And really using MenuTrinfo for your training and just starting and digging into it, it's the best thing you can do.
Well, a big thanks to the both of you again, Jen and Paul, for your presentations and sharing your personal experiences as well. We really appreciate it. Just a couple of last things here. I want to remind you all that we are doing a free webinar throughout 2017. So every month, it'll be the last Tuesday of the month at 3 Eastern, covering a variety of topics. We're kind of alternating months between a food allergy topic and a menu labeling topic. So we hope you'll join us in the coming months. And please sign up for our monthly newsletter to learn a little more. That can be found at MenuTrinfo.com. The next webinar that will be in February, the 28th, is called Lighter Food, Heavier Traffic, and it's all about attracting guests with easy and healthy menu edits. That will be presented by the Director of Nutrition here at MenuTrinfo, Claire Willis. So we hope you will join us for that. And there is a registration link that you can find in the email to follow this webinar. Thank you all for attending, and we will see you next time.